जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी जय राधा। जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य स्तोत्र श्री श्रीमद His Divine Grace Abhay Charanarvind Bhakti Vedanta Swami Shri Prabhupada ki jai। श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण ललिता विशाखा देवी की जय। श्री श्री गौरनिताय की जय। श्री श्री जगन्नाथ बलदेव सुभद्रा महारानी की जय। ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय। निताय गौर प्रेमानंदी हरि हरि बोल। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। So today we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 11, Chapter 2, called Maharaj Nimi Meets the Nine Yogendras, text number 38. Please repeat. Avidyamano pyavabhati hidvayo dhyatur dhiya swapna manoratho yatha tat karma sankalpa vikalpakam mano buddho nirundhyadabhayam tatasya avidyamano pyavabhati hidvayo dhyatur dhiya swapna manoratho yatha tat karma sankalpa vikalpakam mano buddho nirundhyadabhayam tatasya. Please chant. Avidyamano pyavabhati hidvayo Vidyamano pyavabhati hidvayo kalpa vikalpakam mano. Ladies. ध्यातुर धिया स्वप्न मनोरथो यथा तत्कर्म संकल्प विकल्पकम मनो बुधो निरुन्ध्यादभयं ततस्यात्. Avidyamanah, not present in reality. Api, although. Avabhati is manifest. He, indeed. Dvaya, duality. Dhyatuhu, of the person experiencing, dhiya by the intelligence, swapna a dream, manaratho or the conceiving of a desire, yatha as, tat therefore, karma of material activities, sankalpa vikalpakam having the functions of forming positive and negative desires, manaha the mind, buddha an intelligent person, nirundhyat should bring under control, abhayam fearlessness, tataha in this way, syat there may be. Translation and purport by the disciples of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Although the duality of the material world does not ultimately exist, the conditioned soul experiences it as real under the influence of his own conditioned intelligence. This imaginary experience of a world separate from Krishna can be compared to the acts of dreaming and desiring. When the conditioned soul dreams at night of something desirable or horrible, or when he daydreams of what he would like to have or avoid, he creates a reality that has no existence beyond his own imagination. The tendency of the mind is to accept and reject various activities based on sense gratification. Therefore, an intelligent person should control the mind, restricting it from the illusion of seeing things separate from Krishna. And when the mind is thus controlled, he will experience actual fearlessness. Purport. Although the conditioned mind is bewildered by the objects of sense gratification offered by Maya, illusion, if one takes to the unalloyed service of the Lord, such material sense gratification dissipates, for it is merely a mental concoction of the conditioned soul. Srila Sridhara Swami has emphasized by the words avyabhicharini bhakti that one cannot dissipate the illusion of material sense gratification unless one takes to the unalloyed devotional service of the Lord. As Srila Rupa Goswami has stated, Anya bhilashata shunyam jnana karmatyanavitam anukulyena krishnanu shilanam bhaktir uttama. Unalloyed devotional service cannot be mixed with sense gratification or mental speculation. The servant must act only for the satisfaction of the master. Similarly, Lord Krishna states in Bhagavad Gita, Mam ekam sharanam vraja. One must see only Krishna everywhere and must act exclusively for the satisfaction of Lord Krishna, the eternal master of every living entity. Srila Madhvacharya has quoted several verses from the Harivamsha illustrating that the living entity bewildered by identifying with his material body, home, family, friends, and so on, and thus entangled in the cycle of birth and death, accepts phantasmagoria as reality. According to Srila Jiva Goswami, Shravana Kirtanadi Lakshana Matratvam Yato Na Vyahanyeta. If one seriously desires to vanquish the duality of material illusion, one must adopt the process of chanting and hearing the glories of the Supreme Lord. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also cites the following Vedic reference, Harer Nama, Harer Nama, Harer Nameva Kevalam, Kalo Nastyeva Nastyeva, Nastyeva Gatiranyatha. According to the Vedic literatures, the living entities of this Kali Yuga are very feeble in their power to understand spiritual knowledge. Manda Sumanda Matayo Manda Bhagya Hyupadruta. Their minds are always disturbed, and they are lazy and misguided by so many bogus leaders. They are further described in the Bhagavatam as Nissatwan, impatient and impious, Durmedhan, possessed of weak intelligence, and Rasitayusha, very short-lived. Therefore, one who seriously wants to overcome the ignorance of material life must surrender to the process of chanting and hearing the holy name of the Lord, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, as well as reciting and rendering submissive oral reception to the transcendental literatures presented by the Lord, such as Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, and Chaitanya Charitamrita. It should be understood that the living entity is completely spiritual and never actually becomes mixed with material energy. Asango hyayam purushaha. According to Srila Jiva Goswami, tasmin shuddhepi kalpyate. Although the living entity is Shuddha, pure spirit, he imagines that he is a material creation and thus entangles himself in the network of illusion called Deha Patya Kalatradi. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has used the word Manasa Pratyaksha to describe the experience of material life. Manasa Pratyaksha means that which is experienced only within the mind. The actual Pratyaksha is described in Bhagavad Gita, Rajavidya Rajaguhyam Pavitram Idamuttamam Pratyakshaavagamam Dharmyam Susukham Kartumavyayam. When one submissively hears the instructions given by the Lord himself in Bhagavad Gita, which constitute the king of all knowledge, Rajavidya, and the most confidential of all information, Rajaguhyam, by associating with such spotless spiritual knowledge, Pavitram Idamuttamam, one can directly experience one's eternal nature, Pratyakshaavagamam. By experiencing one's eternal nature, one becomes thoroughly religious, dharmyam, blissful, susukham, and eternally engaged in the devotional service of the Lord, kartumavyayam. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has quoted the following Shruti mantra in this connection. Vijita Hrishika Vayubhir Adanta Manas Turagam. By the very senses and life air one has conquered, the uncurbed mind will drag one away. According to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, the meaning of this verse is Samavahaya Gurosh Charanam. If one rejects the lotus feet of one's spiritual master, all of one's previous spiritual advancement becomes null and void. This has already been indicated in the previous verse by the words Guru Devatatma. Unless one accepts a bona fide spiritual master in the authorized parampara as one's worshipable deity and life and soul, there is no question of overcoming the duality of material life. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur has made the following comments on this verse. Control of the mind is a result of living a life of devotional service to the Lord. By the influence of fixed devotional service, the accepting and rejecting mind can stop its thirst for sensory enjoyment apart from Krishna. In transcendental Krishna consciousness, there is no contradiction, pettiness, or lack of ecstasy. In other words, it is not like a material object, which always proves temporary and constantly miserable. Having forgotten Krishna, the living entity is suffering the misdirection and perversion of his own so-called intelligence. The living entities are fragmental parts of the supreme shelter, Krishna, but have fallen from Krishna's kingdom of spiritual pastimes. Because of forgetting the Supreme Lord, they become prone to sinful life and turn their attention to dangerous material objects, which fill them with constant fear. If one desires to subdue the mind, which is constantly engaged in the duality of mental concoction, one must take to the devotional service of Lord Krishna. Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shlakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So, this verse and the previous one speaks of duality, the nature of duality in this world. There's a very famous and profound statement in the Upanishads, particularly Chandogya Upanishad, chapter 6, which begins, Sat eva somya idam agra asit. In the beginning, there was only Sat, namely Brahman, that which is existent. Sat eva, only Sat, idam agra, at the beginning, there was only that. And this simple statement encapsulates the foundational principle underlying the philosophy of Vedanta. You see, they're traditionally regarded as 6 orthodox systems of philosophy, Sankhya and Yoga and Vedanta and Nyaya and Vaisheshika, like that. But of all of the 6, the only one that emphatically and consistently, from its beginning, emphasizes a singular origin, the singular reality to all of existence, is Vedanta. Sankhya speaks of 2 eternal principles, Purusha and Prakriti. Vaisheshika speaks of many, many atoms a huge number of tiny atoms which are the foundational building blocks, the paramanu, which are the foundational building blocks of this creation. But Vedanta says, yes, there are atoms that build this creation. Yes, there is Purusha and Prakriti. But above all of that is one eternal reality, Brahman, Sat. This is a profound statement. It's not one we should assume easily, because not all religious traditions of the world accept this perspective. Not all philosophical systems, even in India, accept this viewpoint, that ultimately reality is one. This is something we share in common, for example, with our Christians, brothers and sisters, as well as Muslims, that the ultimate reality, when everything comes down to the last original person, original reality, it's going to be one in number. Now, why one? Why not many? Why, if we go back to the beginning of creation, if we trace things back, why do we end with a single creator? Why not a committee at the end that creates the world? 3 people, a triad. The reason for that is very straightforward. The reason is that when we identify the origin of everything as one, then it means that everything in creation, all of reality, is connected, it's united. You and me, we share something in common, which is a singular origin. We participate in a singular reality. Us and the birds and the animals and the earth itself, we're one reality. Us and God, also we are united in one reality. So it creates a sense of unity, a sense of community, and a sense of wholeness by identifying everything back to one. And why is that important? Why is it useful to be connected like that? To think of everyone and everything as one and united? The answer for that is given in this verse and the previous verse that we read yesterday. Bhayam dvitiya bhiniveshata syat. That because duality is the source of fear in this world, it's the origin of fear. Think about this. Why do we lock our doors at night? Because of someone else, right? Because of another. We're afraid that someone who is not our well-wisher will come in the middle of the night and steal what we have or harm us. Why do we protect ourselves from wild animals? Why do we protect ourselves from diseases? It's all because there are other living entities, sometimes very small, sometimes very large, whom we fear. As soon as there is another, as soon as there is duality, there is fear. In the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, there's a wonderful story about the beginning of creation, where it describes the experience of Prajapati, Brahma, the first created being in this world. And he says, Brihadaranyaka says that when he was born, the first man, he was afraid. He looked around, it was all dark, and he was afraid. And then he thought, he said, who is there besides me? He looked around and there was no one. So he thought, what is there to be afraid of? Brihadaranyaka Upanishad says, after all, one is afraid of another. This simple point, that one is always afraid of another. If there is no one else, what is there to be afraid of? So as soon as we recognize the unity of creation, the fact that you and I are connected or are indeed the same reality, as soon as we recognize that every living being in this creation is actually part of one reality, fear disappears. Right? We experience abhaya. We're not afraid of anything in this world. What is there to fear? When in fact the person I'm meeting is in fact just me. Isn't it? So this is the reason, this is the secret, this is why Vedanta philosophy insists on the unity of origin, Sateva. Right? The famous Mahavakya, Ekam eva dvitiyam, that there is only one, Ekam, Advitiyam, no two, no duality. Chaitanya Charitamrita says, Ekala Ishara Krishna Arshab Bhritya. There's one Lord, one Master, that's Krishna. Everyone else is servant. That one reality, that Eka. In Chaturshloki Srimad Bhagavatam, the very first verse of the 4 essential verses, Aham evasam, I'm forgetting now. Aham evasam evagre, right? Aham evasam evagre. In the beginning, same thing as the Upanishad. Agre, in the beginning. Aham evasam eva. Aham eva. Only I, asam, existed. So, Srila Jiva Goswami, you know this famous verse that we study regularly, we quote, Vadanti tat tattva vidas tattvam yajñanam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaniti shabdyate. That the ultimate reality is known in 3 ways, Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. We use this verse to emphasize how Krishna comes in 3 different aspects. Brahman, the impersonal, Paramatma, the Lord within the heart, and Bhagavan, the Supreme Lord, the personal Godhead. But Srila Jiva Goswami, in his Sandarbhas, spends as much time on describing these 3 as he does talking about the word before that, Vadanti tat tattva vidas tattvam yajñanam advayam. That this 3-fold reality, Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan, is advaya. It's not 2, it's 1. In fact, he goes through everything connected to Krishna. He talks about Krishna's abode, Goloka. And he says, this abode of Krishna is not different from Krishna. It is actually part of Krishna's own nature, Advaya. Krishna's clothing, his dhoti, what is it? It's Krishna. Non-different from Krishna. It's not something that Krishna accepts like we do, right? Our dhoti gets old, we put on a new dhoti, and we throw away the old one. Not like that. Krishna's paraphernalia, Krishna's associates, Krishna's beauty, Krishna's jewelry, everything he goes through for like pages and pages and pages, talking about how every aspect of Krishna is actually Krishna. Why? Once again, if you point to anything, Krishna's dhoti, Krishna's flute, Krishna's abode, and you say, this is not Krishna, now all of a sudden, how many things do you have in creation? 2, at least, maybe 3, maybe 4. And if at the level of the ultimate reality, there's more than one, then duality is introduced. Then there's cause for fear in the spiritual world. Then Krishna may think, who is better? Who is more supreme? There's competition for the position of supremacy. There's potentially 2 realities that we might want to achieve. Maybe there's God, maybe there's the devil. Where do we go? So Jiva Goswami makes this point clear. Advaya, God is one. Ultimate reality is one, not 2. And this is the fundamental principle of the Upanishads. Why? Bhayam dvitiya bhiniveshata syat. Because duality, difference, is the very source of fear in this world. So we get rid of duality, we get rid of fear. Now here's the problem. We've gotten rid of duality, we've gotten rid of fear, but along with fear, we've also gotten rid of what else? We've gotten rid of joy. We've gotten rid of happiness. We've gotten rid of relationship. We've gotten rid of our own identities. We've gotten rid of anything worth living for. And this is why that passage from Brihadaranyaka I told you about, where Brahma is first born, Prajapati, he looks around, he's afraid, and then he says, what is there to be afraid of? There's no one but me. And after all, one fears another. The other is to be afraid of. Isn't it that in this world we're always afraid of the other? Right now we're doing this Vaishnav Christian dialogue. And all over the world, people are suspicious. They're afraid of the other religion. Oh, Christians, we don't know what they believe, what they practice. Christians thinking, Jews, we don't know what they believe, what they practice. Muslims, they're very dangerous. Right? We're afraid because we don't know. What is the other? It's the unknown. So it's the cause for fear. So the initial solution that Brihadaranyaka says is, look around, there's no one else, it's just you. We're all one, so nothing to fear. But also, if there's nothing to fear, there's also nothing to love, isn't it? For love, we need two, not one, we need two. And so that same passage then says, then Brahma, after his fear was gone, he looked around and he said, I'm very lonely. There's no one else here. And the Upanishad says, therefore one feels no joy when one is alone. Isn't it? Okay, for a few minutes, it's nice to be in your room, be peaceful, got rid of the world. But after a while, the worst punishment you can give a person is solitary confinement, isn't it? Much rather to be in a dangerous situation with others. At least you might meet a friend, even in a prison. Solitary confinement is so painful, it's so horrible. We're left only with our own mind. So Brahma says, there's no one else. Therefore, he felt no joy. And so Brihadaranyaka says he split himself into two, man and woman, in order to experience that relationship, that connection. Same thing, this Chandogya Upanishad, the verse I started with, Sat eva somya idam agra asit. In the beginning there was only Sat, that which is existent. Yes, but that's only the first sentence. The next one says, Tadaikshata bahusyam prajayeya. He thought, that one being thought, Bahusyam, let me become many. Prajayeya, let me propagate myself. Why? Because of desire. Because of a desire for relationship. In this world, that introduction of duality is the beginning of fear. Now you've got another, you don't know who to expect. You have to be afraid. But in the spiritual world, that duality is the cause for joy. In spiritual relationships, that duality becomes the cause of our happiness, the reason for our existence. And therefore, again, if we go back to this verse, Chaturshloki Bhagavatam, Aham evasam evagre. In the beginning, Krishna says, only I existed. Aham eva, only I. Asam eva agre. I mean, this is as emphatic as you can get. I existed only in the beginning. Aham, I, eva, only. Eva, again he says, only in the beginning. It was just me. And what does Srila Jiva Goswami say? He says, actually what Krishna means when he says only I existed, he means I, with his abode and his friends and his family and his devotees and his paraphernalia and the whole spiritual world existed. That's what it means. And you can say, this is ridiculous. The verse is saying exactly the opposite thing. It's saying, only I existed. And Krishna is using the word eva twice to emphasize it. It's just me. But here's the thing. Unity is useful in the beginning. In order to get rid of our state of fear in this world, we need to collapse everything down to one reality so we can feel the connection. We can feel the security that comes from knowing that we are one. But once that has been accomplished and we recognize Aham Brahmasmi, Sarvam Khalvidam Brahma, everything is Brahman. Now we've done that. Now that one Brahman we can take and we can unpack him. We can separate out everything that is there, all the variety and all the activity and all the duality that is present within the singularity. And that is the eternal tension that we find in Vedanta. That's the eternal tension that we find in the Upanishads. That is the resolution that we find in Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's philosophy of Achintya Bheda Bheda. That we need to affirm both. We need to affirm the unity of creation in order to get rid of our fear of others. But then we need to affirm the multiplicity of creation in order to find a way to love others, to relate with others. And that's what we do when we dialogue, this Vaishnav Christian dialogue that we're doing. Is the first thing we point out is actually we have so much in common. We believe in one God. Christians, Muslims, Hindus, Srila Prabhupada says all are Vaishnavas. Why? Because they believe in a personal deity, that God is a person. So there's unity, we're one. But then, as we talk to each other, we discuss, we recognize, yes, we're one, yes, we have so many things in common, but also there are some differences. Also, the way that I see my Lord, Sri Krishna, is a little bit different than how my neighbor sees their Lord and what they appreciate about Krishna. Why? Because Krishna is a multifaceted gem. From any direction you look at him, he looks beautiful, isn't it? Just like Radha Krishna here. You look at Krishna from this side, he looks so beautiful. And you look at him from that side, he looks very different and very beautiful. I was thinking today during Mangalarti. Yes. Totally different, right? And I was thinking during Mangalarti today, so beautiful. I mean, today, if you had darshan during Mangalarti, Gaurnitai were looking gorgeous. I mean, personally, this is my personal opinion, I think these Gaurnitai are the most beautiful I've ever seen. They're so gorgeous. I actually had the privilege of seeing them when they were still in the workshop in Jaipur. I was there for other deities and I saw these Gaurnitais. Wow, they're so beautiful. Where are they going? And he said, oh, they're going to ISKCON Chennai. But so beautiful. The less they have on them, the less jewelry, the less garlands, the more beautiful they look. Isn't it? I was thinking, how can we find anything more beautiful in this world than what we saw this morning? It's not possible, right? Just so gorgeous. And yet the irony of it is that we're still attracted to the beauty of this world. And therefore Mahaprabhu says, Durdaivam idrisham mihajani nanuragaha. This is what's so unfortunate, is you cannot find anyone more beautiful in this world than Krishna during Mangalarti. It's just impossible. And yet, somehow we manage to find other things that attract us more. So anyway, when we find that in the unity that is Krishna, we find the duality that is present within him, then we have the best of both worlds. We are without fear, and yet we have the opportunity to love. We have the opportunity for relationship. Finding duality within the unity, that's where we want to be. That's the secret of what Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has to offer us. And therefore, there's this wonderful verse, Maharaj Kulashekara, he says in his Mukundamala, he describes this duality in unity with these words. He says, Naham vande tava charanayor dvandvamadvandvaheto. Naham vande tava charanayor dvandvamadvandvaheto. Kumbhipakam gurumapi hare narakam napanetum. Ramya Rama mridutanulata nandanena pirantum. Ramya Rama mridutanulata nandanena pirantum. Bhave bhave hridaya bhavane bhavayeyam bhavantam. Bhave bhave hridaya bhavane bhavayeyam bhavantam. The first line he says, Krishna, why do I need non-duality? Advandva. Advandva means liberation. Liberation is the state of non-duality. Who needs oneness? Who needs non-duality when I have the best duality that is present that I can ever find? What is that duality? It's your two lotus feet. Naham vande tava charanayor dvandvam. Your lotus feet are dvandva, they're two. When I've got that duality, who needs oneness? The purpose of oneness is to be free of fear, yes? But what can be a safer place in this world than Krishna's lotus feet? Therefore he says later on, he says, Ma bhi mandamano vichintya bahuda yamishchiram yatana. Ma bhi mandamano vichintya bahuda yamishchiram yatana. Naivami prabhavanti paparipava swami nanu shridhara. Alasyam vyapaniya bhakti sulabham dhyayasva narayanam. Alasyam vyapaniya bhakti sulabham dhyayasva narayanam. Lokasya vyasanapano danakaro dasasya kimna kshama. He says, why are you afraid? Mandamano, oh foolish mind. Why are you afraid? Ma bhi, don't be afraid. Don't worry about the dualities of this world. Hunger and thirst, poverty and wealth, beauty and ugliness. Don't worry about all of that. Friends and enemies. Why? Swami Nanu Shridhara. Your master is Shridhara, the husband of the goddess of fortune. Nanu, isn't it? He's saying in Sanskrit, Nanu, isn't it? Have you forgotten? What is there to fear in this world? All you have to do, alasyam vyapaniya, give up your laziness, alasyam. Bhakti sulabham dhyayasva narayana. Remember Lord Narayana, who is easily obtained by bhakti. Lokasya vyasanapano danakaro dasasya kimna kshama. That Lord who removes the fear, this bhayam, this last word here, abhayam tatasyat. That Lord who removes the fear of the whole world, lokasya vyasana apanodana karo dasasya kimna kshama. What will he not do for his own servant? He's doing it for the world, no? He's taking care of everyone. And he won't take care of his own servant? His own devotee? No, not possible. So ma bhi, don't worry, don't be afraid. Take this duality that you have, his two lotus feet, because there is no safer place in this world. Maybe you have this experience in your practice of Krishna consciousness, that when you are in the association of devotees, doing Harinam Sankirtan, there is no safer place in this world, isn't it? No one can take, who can take anything from you at that point? You can't take anything. If you have the holy name with you, and you have the association of devotees, there's nothing to lose. Even if we lose our life at that point, it's glorious, it's wonderful. What more could a person ask for? What to speak of losing anything else? It's the safest place, these two lotus feet of Krishna. Therefore, who is it? I think Vedanta Deshika, who wrote this Paduka Sahasri, isn't it? 1,000 verses 1,000 verses glorifying the sandals of the Lord, just his chappals. That these are his he says, two boats that the Lord has given for us to cross this ocean of existence and be completely safe in this ocean if we just get in the boats of his lotus feet. So this is the essence of this verse, right? And the previous one, bringing together this point. Let's start with unity. Let's understand that all of us, we're coming from the same source. We belong to the same substance. We belong to Krishna. We have one Father, one reality. But then, from that oneness, let's move to individuality, to duality, after we've gotten rid of the fear and recognize that each one of us are individuals, that we have a personal relationship with Krishna and with each other. And it's in that duality that we find our happiness, our joy, and our home. So, thank you very much. I'll stop here. We have maybe 2 minutes, 3 minutes left for questions, comments. Yes, Anuttama Prabhu. Yes. Brother Martin.
Always together. And Christ said, I and the Father are one. It is the essential unity. And then he says, whatever you do to the least of my brothers and sisters, that you do unto me, because I am in everything and everybody. So we have to keep this unity and duality always together, not to sacrifice one for the sake of the other, because it's the duality that gives us the space for relationships, devotion and sharing and everything. And so it is so essentially we speak the same kind of vision. Thank you so much for that.
I was just wanting you emphasize that the oneness leads to fear. Duality leads to fear. But isn't it like the verse also mentioned desire many times? So you really emphasize the idea of fear, but isn't there also part of that formula the tendency to exploit or objectify and see others as an object of my personal gratification? Isn't that 50% of that formula there? So can you work that in?
Yeah, so thank you so much for both of you for pointing that out. First, what Father Martin was saying, I was recollecting how this doctrine of dual natures is there, right? That Jesus is 100% God, and he is also fully human. And this same unity and duality is there. As 100% God, he is non-different from God, right? There's unity there. But as human, then in that way there's difference between God and creation, between Lord and servant. So both have to be held together in order to understand the nature of Jesus Christ. So thank you so much. That's really the principle of Achintya Bheda Bheda is there. Very nice. And then for Anuttama Prabhu, I think you've pointed out that I've only spoken about half the problem that's mentioned in this verse, right? So you have this, two things are there. The bhaya is there, but also swapna manoratho is described. That manoratha means the running of the mind, the desires of the mind. That too is that's actually the primary cause for fear in this world. So the duality is there, dvitiya, bhayam dvitiya bhiniveshata, that the previous verse says duality is the cause of fear. But this verse then specifies that further and says it's the desire that is born of duality which then is the cause of fear, right? So when we desire, say we desire wealth, so as a result of that desire, I work hard, I gather that wealth. But then that gives birth to fear, right? What is the fear? That I may lose this wealth. Someone may take this wealth away from me. Or that I may work very hard and never gain the wealth that I want. So desire and fear are very intimately connected, desire and suffering. This is the great insight, actually, of Lord Buddha, of the Buddhist traditions, that begin with this point: the world is suffering. Why is the world suffering? Suffering is caused by desire, right? So dukkha is the first principle, the first of the Four Noble Truths, and then is trishna, or craving. That's the second issue, right? So the previous verse we got duality, which is the cause of fear, and now the next step, what is it? Desire. Because duality, the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, that story I told you, what is it? He says, I'm alone, therefore I'm not afraid. But he can't stay alone because there's desire. And that desire is not yet pure desire. It's desire to enjoy, to exploit. The story actually goes on and says that there becomes two, and then Prajapati, he runs after her to have sexual intercourse. And she does not want it. So she runs away, and she hides herself and turns herself into a horse, a mare. And he becomes a male horse and chases after her. And she becomes a female goat and he becomes a male goat. And in this way they chase each other all around the world and populate this world with different beings. That's the desire that causes fear in this world. He's looking, how can I exploit her, as you said? How can I enjoy her? What can I get from her? And she doesn't want to be exploited. And she's afraid of him. And so they run around the world, and this world is born. From that fear, from that desire. But we contrast that with the desire that's found in the spiritual world. And it's a very different dialectic. That desire is described in Chaitanya Charitamrita so beautifully. Krishnadas Kaviraj says, you know this verse? It says, Radha Krishna Pranaya Vikritir Hladinir Shakti Rasmat Ekatmanav Api Bhuvipura Deha Bhedam Gato. That always, that Radha and Krishna are one reality. They're one. And yet, Api Bhuvipura Deha Bhedam. From the beginning, they have become two. Why? For the purpose not of exploitation, not this desire, manoratha, the running of the mind, but for real lila, for real rasa, the exchange of selfless relationship. They have become two. And then, in the form of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they have again become one. So this is the eternal dialectic, Prabhupada says, the eternal dialectic of unity and duality. In this world, that dialectic happens of oneness and duality, but the net result is quite problematic. Oneness leads to loneliness, duality leads to fear. You kind of don't know which one to live in. Right? Is it better to be alone and I'm peaceful and happy, be a hermit, cut myself out from the world, but it's too lonely. So let's find someone else. But that's painful too, because that person wants to exploit me and I want to exploit them. In the spiritual world, you've got the same dialectic, but each one is a cause for joy. Our unity is a cause for joy because we feel our connection with Krishna, and our duality is a cause for joy because we can have a relationship with Krishna and with each other. This is the dialectic of unity and duality, both in the material and in the spiritual world. So our time is up. We have a program to begin.
30 days from today, all the Sri Vaishnavas get up early in the morning and sing the songs of Andal. Tirupavai starts from today.
So thank you all so much. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.